Welcome to Season 2 of the New Way Podcast with Ben and Matt. The New Way Podcast Season 2 contains even more adult language and naughty situations. For example, if Season 1 was Showgirls, Season 2 is Lars von Trier's Nymphomaniac. That's right, even the references to boobs are going to get a little bit more adult. Listener discretion is mandatory.
Choke me with that dead cat.
What?
The dead cat next to the bed. Choke me with it.
But they have this girl who plays the cello, and I think that's supposed to be ironic, but I can't tell anymore.
How the fuck else would you do this job? Cocaine and hookers, my friend.
Right.
Hell, I drove up from Dallas one time. That's 850 miles. I'd done that in 8 hours.
Will you help teach me about this? What is it? A new way?
Welcome once again to the New Way Podcast with Ben and Matt. I'm Ben.
I am Matt.
And we are back.
Back in black.
And
No.
and better than ever.
I hope.
Yeah. We are back and ready to entertain our marginal and dwindling, I'm sure at this point, dwindling amount of listeners.
I imagine right now it's still just Sarah, Greg, my mom. My mom, by the way, one of our most loyal listeners, just realized literally last week that we were no longer on the air. She was like, I haven't seen a thing about a podcast in a little bit. You guys been off for a couple weeks? Like, yeah, about 3 months,
Well,
4 months.
apparently this season, the season thing isn't really picking up with the podcast. But we're going to bring this in. This is going to be a new thing. So this is
April to October.
Exactly. This is season 2. So welcome everybody. Thank you for hanging with us for last year. Hope you enjoyed a lot of the stuff.
I love the police sirens in the background.
Oh, that was my soundboard. I'm hitting soundboards. I'm like, yeah, I'm over here like...
This is our version of Beverly Hills Cop.
Yes. This season's going to be much better with sound effects and police chases.
We've threatened that for so long, and it may actually happen, so be forewarned, everyone. There may be a wacky sound effects episode as a test to see how it performs. And we do look at the analytics, so...
Absolutely. Well, so this season, there are going to be a few fun things happening here and there. We are going out to LA, and we're probably going to have a few podcast guests when we're out there. I imagine we'll probably do a podcast every day while we're out there and just log up on them.
We'll finally meet John Arthur.
Oh, absolutely.
Our longest running fellow writer / pen pal.
Yeah, John Arthur listens. Although, actually, you don't give us enough credit, actually, because there are multiple people who, for example, my friend Chad Porter, old friend, musician friend of mine, who played in the band Hand Honey back in the day. There's your little plug there, Chad. But he sent me a message like a month ago being like, dude, what happened to the podcast? I was listening to it every week. It was really good.
We do. We have much like Dirty Skirty, we have a small but ferocious and voracious, I should say, fan base out there.
So ferocious.
Both. I mean, listen, a lot of Wolverines and Badgers and Cougars and other things that are ferocious and voracious at the same time.
Exactly. But so thanks again. Before we get into this season and really this specific podcast, I did want to give a brief dedication. We're not really in the practice of giving dedications
but this one's worth
on the
it.
podcast, but this one is worth it. Unfortunately, a good friend of ours, Kristen Travis Northrup, passed away today, literally, this morning. We're not quite sure when you're going to be hearing this, but this is obviously very heavy on our hearts and our minds. And I really only... The first thing that when Matt even discussed if we were going to do the podcast or not was that, or am I really going to be in the mood, or are we really kind of in the mood to do this sort of thing? And I said, I'm fine, but I do want to kind of give a quick dedication. I kind of want to pay my respects. So I I mean, for somebody who meant so much to both my life, to Matt's life, to my wife's life, I mean, and all the people who we're immediate friends with and are close to, Kristen Northrup.
And pretty much anyone who ever met Kristen.
Yeah, everyone
for the
knows.
most part.
And even my wife said today, the first time she ever hung out with my friends was at my birthday party, my 25th birthday party. And the first person that came up to her and made her feel comfortable was Kristen.
Yeah.
And so, here's to you, Kristen. We'll do it.
Cheers.
That's a cheers to Kristen from the Last Pint Productions team here.
Yeah. So
And-
now we need to this is tough because now we have a little bit of the onus on us to make this a damn good podcast because we've dedicated it to a damn good person.
Well, we'll know if we're like halfway through the podcast and all of our equipment just shuts down that Kristen is really pissed off at us.
Listen, if we devolve into blubbering, crying for a few minutes in this, any of you out there who want your money back from our free podcast that you don't pay for anyway, we'll gladly refund you. And anyone that gives a shit about it, you'll have to answer to Ben. All right, I'm just going to say that right now because I'm not a fighter at all. Very, very poor fighter. Very small hands, weak, not good.
It comes from the guy that played football.
Yeah, I wasn't very good at football. I didn't say I was good at football. I just played it. So anyway, it is now 2014. This is probably
What?
this is.
When did that happen?
I don't know. It's been a mess. This is probably going to be the first podcast you hear this season. That's what we're at least aiming for right now. And I think with only 2 days to go, that's probably going to be the way I do it, unless we launch next week. Not sure yet. But either way, welcome back from our long hiatus. As Ben said, we kind of apologize that we have made our own season. Unlike any other podcast, it just tends to run when it runs. We've decided we're better than those other guys, and we're not going to live by their schedule. We are going to podcast from the odd dates of April through October, and then we're going to have our summer break from November through March. Or not. We may just wind up, if Ben doesn't have any more twins, and I don't have crazy time at work, then maybe we'll actually make this run a full year. We're not sure yet. But we decided for our topic this evening or morning, whenever you're listening to this, is obviously let's discuss the movies of 2013. We've passed the Oscars now. God only knows what you will hear throughout the season as far as our Oscar.
I think you could make a soundboard
podcast.
Yeah, we recorded an Oscar podcast that I think could just work as a soundboard based off of the things that we.
I don't know that it can work in any capacity. Pretty much now. Anything that is limited to 10-second clips. We attempted the most technologically unadvanced cross-talk podcast of all time, including a group of people watching the Oscars live, Ben Skyping in with a surrogate speaking for him. It was everything I dreamed it could be and more. To be honest, we all knew it was not going to work.
Exactly.
We knew it was going to be a ton of fun.
But it was a lot of fun.
And it was absolutely hysterical. So hopefully we'll get a few sound bites from there. You can listen to our good friend Casey being Ben's stand-in and trying to go on one of Ben's rants by reading it, which is really, that's worth the price of admission right there.
It is.
But so yeah, when we watched the Oscars, we got through. You're always going to have a few Oscar movies at least on your list each year as far as your favorite movies of the previous year, or just in general discussing what cinema was like really in 2013. And I think it was it was definitely, I think, one of the most. Okay, so I mean, let me know what you think about this. So every year it gets more and more where the Oscar movies are coming out within a 1 month period, pretty much, of December. Early release in December, then they're coming out. They're barely in wide release by the time
It's still
that
October
they go.
to December for me.
It seemed like this. It seems each year to me, and maybe I just forget the previous year. It just seemed it was more extreme this year. That there were movies that I had to wait a long. I mean, really, almost several of the main of almost like 90% of the main movies up for Best Picture were very late. Other than maybe Captain Phillips and I don't even know when 12 Years opened or when that was going.
Nebraska was earlier.
I see Nebraska. I remember I could barely find. So by the time it actually came out, I thought Nebraska was later. I thought that was in December. But maybe I'm wrong.
No,
but
Nebraska was like October.
Oh, wow. Then maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But yeah, it was a lot.
So many of them start in limited release.
Yeah.
And then they kind of trickle down. And then by the time they're in theaters, you might not even realize that they're in theaters. And the next thing you know, they're on home video. Because that's the thing. Nebraska was one of the first that was on home video.
Yeah.
And I think Captain Phillips came out much later than
See, I like Captain Phillips. Like I could be. Listen, we could go to the internet, but that's a waste of time.
Yeah,
it's. I'm more kind of interested, in talking to Ben. We've talked a little bit about last year's movies, but kind of what your feel was as far as like the health of like. How did you think the mix worked last year between indie films and mainstream?
My feeling of last year, and I think the general consensus is that it was a pretty strong. My State of the Union, as it may be, is that it was a very strong year in cinema. It wasn't as strong of a year in mainstream cinema. There were very few huge. I hate to use the oft ridiculed on this podcast word tentpoles. So some of the larger films didn't really. There weren't any of those films like the Avengers that absolutely were just like everything kind of fell together.
And the closest you had to that was something like Iron Man, which was so early that it came and went very quickly.
Well, and even then, we're talking about Iron Man 3 here.
Yeah.
A lot of people had some serious reservations about Iron Man 3
yes.
and about the treatment of the Mandarin character, which I can completely understand and appreciate. And I've seen Iron Man 3 multiple times since I saw it in the theater with Matt, and I've actually come to appreciate the criticisms a little bit more because the first time I saw it, I think I was a little bit just kind of in my Shane Black, Robert Downey Iron Man mode. And was excited about seeing it, but the film does have flaws. It's not
absolutely.
It's not a flawless film. It doesn't really, to me, hold a candle to the Avengers in terms of spectacle and in terms of entertainment content, at least especially on a rewatchable level. But altogether, when you're talking about the entire spectrum of film, I feel like this is a great year for independent film. It was a great year for films that were a little bit under the radar. I personally had some friends that did some great stuff in film last year. Amy Siemens with Sun Don't Shine, which is a really good movie. Didn't make my top 10, but was a really good movie. Some other people that made a couple other movies that made a big splash, like Kings of Summer, which also didn't make any sort of list of mine. But there were some very, very good sort of offbeat films, and we'll get into some of them that I wanted to specifically mention. But I think as a year, it was a very eclectic, a very solid year for independent film. And I know that they go on that sliding scale for the Academy Awards now, but I do think it means something as well that there were 9 movies nominated for an Academy Award.
Yeah.
Whereas some years there could be 6 or 7 or 8 or, just depending on the amount of movies that get a vote. So, that being said, I must preface all this entire discussion by the big movies that I have not seen. I have not seen Her yet, which I really do want to see. Spike Jonze is one of my favorite directors, and I'm very, very interested in seeing.
I'm very curious to see your opinion on Her. To be honest,
I'm gonna like it. I can.
I have a feeling you probably will, but I never know with you. Sometimes it's you can surprise me. Yeah, you talk about some interesting things, and I'm sure some of there's some films I noticed as you were going through your little list there. Yeah, I'm sure were purposely avoided because they're going to be on your actual list. I know I can probably name 2 on your list right now. Assuming I know you've seen one. I believe you've seen the other.
Well, here's the thing. I actually one of the ways I kind of wanted to talk about was you might not have your definitive list.
Yeah, I don't really.
And I wrote down 10 films just because I wanted to have 10 films.
I have an idea, but
I think that there are probably 3 movies on my top 10 list that were on your top 10 list.
Okay.
Actually, 2. Now that I think about it, maybe 2.
Well, see, okay, so I'll give my notable exceptions of movie, and I watched this year. I got through. I believe this year looking back on 2013, I watched probably more movies in the past year than I have in a long time. I got through pretty much anything that was up for...
And I'm the exact opposite.
Yeah, I got through... Well, you have children. That tends to happen. I just have work, and I decompress by watching movies. So I watched a ton of things, and I was very surprised also at my reaction. There are certain things I've missed, and two of them are notable exceptions, and I have a feeling they will be on your list, but you don't have to say yes or no. But there are two movies that I have not been in the right frame of mind to watch yet, and I refuse to watch them until I can really appreciate them properly. One is Upstream Color, and the other is the final in the before sunrise, the final of the before
midnight.
Before midnight. I never remember the names of each one of those three, but
no, it's pretty clear. Both of those are actually on my list.
Yes, I figured exactly. And I've heard, and you've talked about them very highly, and that's one of those things I take seriously, especially when I know it's going to be kind of an emotional or visceral experience with a film. I won't just watch it to make myself watch it. And I did that with some of the Oscar movies, and that may have hurt, I think, kind of how I viewed them. And it's one of those things that, when I look back on 2012 or 2013, certain things surprise me, and it made me kind of want to look at films with a different perspective. And I know I've already talked to our friend John Arthur out in LA about kind of wanting to discuss this on a podcast with him. And I said we can do two, because I don't want to only discuss African American films with our one very strong African American supporter, but he is in a very unique position to be able to talk to us about movies from that standpoint and writing from that standpoint.
Absolutely.
And we've had the great pleasure of reading several things he's written that don't really fall into any stereotype. But, I talked to him as soon as I watched 12 Years a Slave and The Butler, the same weekend. And I literally, Monday morning, I felt like a horrible white human being. And it wasn't anything to do with that the movies made me feel bad. It was that I did not care for the movies as much as I wanted to. Maybe not so much The Butler. I kind of knew where I was going to stand with that one. Do you mind if I take a sip real quick?
Take a sip. Oh, we're trying some 25th anniversary Full Sail Doppelbock here. I completely understand.
And it was great just talking to John Arthur, and he had the greatest make me feel even worse, but said it nicely to me as I was I'm talking about 12 Years a Slave with him. And he's like, listen, I was on my way to my grandmother's funeral, and she grew up on a plantation, so I'm probably bringing an unfair amount of baggage to that movie to discuss this with you in that way. And I was like, oh, man, that's tough. But, and then I watched something, a movie.
It would be the same as my friend Allison Carter, who went to Columbine.
Yes.
And had
about Elephant?
Had an intimate relationship with one of the Columbine killers watching Elephant. They're obviously going to have a far different experience, and that's on a different level. But I do it as a film goer. I know. Okay, I'll give you a great example as a television series. It's going to totally trivialize everything I said, and please, everyone out there, do not take this as offensive that I'm saying these two things in the same breath. But there's a show on right now that I know that both Ben and I watch, and we both recognize that it is not probably a very good show. But it's the Goldbergs. And the Goldbergs, for me, I tune in every week because it's my childhood. I literally see a little geeky... I think you're shortchanging it by saying it's not a good show. I would say it's not a great show, but it's a good show. It's definitely a good show.
It's an okay show. I've noticed it comes apart at the seams very quickly, especially with some of the characterizations of things. But I understand that
they get off on nostalgia.
Yeah, and I don't like the mom and the dad characters never quite... They're too... the same thing each time. There's some things I have problems with in the show, but I understand that I tune in that each week, and I'm going to defend it more than most people, just because it's like looking at my childhood. And that's the same as you go to any movie, you're going to always bring your own baggage to it and make it better, oftentimes make it better or worse based on either your history or your mood or your frame of mind. So where I was getting to with that is basically that's why I haven't watched two of the most acclaimed films from last year. But what I've heard are two films that need to be watched in the right frame of mind that are going to be on Ben's list.
Well, here's the thing about Upstream Color specifically. Upstream Color was my favorite movie of most of last year. I got to the end of the year, and that was kind of the unrivaled champion for me. It helps. I'm a huge fan of Shane Carruth, and I'm a huge fan of Amy Seymour's my friend who plays the main female character in the film.
Who allowed me to Facebook friend her because I was friends with Ben, and that made me very happy.
Oh, nice. She only has like 1,400 Facebook friends.
I know. I'm one of them.
Oh, my God. Anyways, no, I was blown away the first time I saw Upstream Color, and it's actually, my wife made a very acute point after we saw it. She was like, "You're going to like this movie no matter what." And I said, yes, I was going to like the movie, but I wasn't going to love it. And the reason why I loved it is because it was so different from Primer. I mean, it was so different from Primer that I felt like it wasn't, it completely subverted what you would consider the sophomore slump. It was such a different aesthetic that they were trying to establish in that film as opposed to what they were doing in Primer, which is my favorite science fiction movie maybe of all time. So, I did love Upstream Color. Now, Upstream Color got rivaled to me to what eventually I'm going to call my number one, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But the other movie that you were mentioning was
Before Midnight.
Before Midnight, which is it's a shoo-in for me because I'm such a huge fan of the series. I'm a huge fan of the creative team behind it. I love Linklater, I love Hawk, and I love Delpy. I can say that Before Midnight would have been, if I had looked at the entire list of movies coming out the following year in 2012, I would have said that Before Midnight was going to be my favorite movie, and it wasn't. And it's not because it's any worse of a movie, but it's because the first two movies are so steeped in romanticism that the third film involves this couple that's essentially married and has twin girls. What? And it's so steeped in cynicism and the idea that life has just taken them in the wrong place that it almost took me aback the first, like, watching it, and I was just like, these characters were cynical characters, but in a romantic context, where now they are like, there's like a cynical character, a cynical context, and a romantic character trying to make something out of this awful situation, basically. And
which is often as life is.
Which is often as life is. And Delpy pretty much came out and said, my character is not going to be likable. Because life has gotten in the way. And she's the one with the responsibility and is taking care of the girls while this guy, the romantic, is off on book tours and stuff. I mean, it's uncomfortable to watch. And it's really true. It really feels like a real relationship has kind of gone through all of this.
And I haven't seen it. I would have kind of... I'm still also waiting for that discussion, that type of couple discussion to be done better, where it's the female, where the roles are reversed a little bit. I like that. I'd say the closest, and it's not quite the same, but the closest I've seen to stuff kind of like that is something like Young Adult, where you really have a female that's very much in that, and you have the romantic male, the other side.
Sure.
But I've heard nothing but good things. I mean, it made it on everyone's top 10 list of the year.
It's extremely well written, and it really is it's only four sequences is what the movie is. And it's 4 different basic scenes. It's like a 4-act play.
I am dying, by the way, to see his new one.
Linklater?
Yeah, the one that he shot over the last 10 years with the same kid.
You're talking about what's it called?
I forget what it's called, but everything I've read has said
it's 20 years.
20 years. I've heard nothing but just
Jean Favreau wrote after he walked out of the movie at whatever it was, Cannes. He just wrote emotionally devastated #. I
don't remember what the name of it is, but every person I see is the same thing. They're just like, I don't even know how to.
It's not called adulthood, is it? It's called
something like similar to that. But
for those of you that don't know, Linklater shot a movie that literally had the same. It's called Boyhood. Boyhood is what the name of the movie is, and it started when the titular boy in the movie was 4 years old, and they shot the movie
Each summer.
Well, not each summer. Every 4 summers. So they would go 4 summers ahead to where he was 8, and then to where he was 12.
With the same
and
actor.
then to where he was 16, and then to where he was 19, almost 20. So they literally shot this movie over the course of 16 and a half years, using the same actors. So Ethan Hawke was a boy when they started shooting this film.
Yeah.
And essentially what would equate to a short film, you know, and not a boy, but I mean, it was in the early 2000s.
Yeah, like Dead Poets Society.
Or late 99.
Yeah.
And so now
it's insane. I'm so excited to see that movie. I can't.
But I also just can't imagine seeing this kid who's 4 or 6 years old or whatever, and just watching this progression of life.
And seeing
Linklater is, I mean, he's an incredible director.
Linklater is absolutely, it's said a lot about a lot of directors, but he is 100% in a class of his own, in that he really, other than, like, I mean, he has a series, he has a trilogy, but he doesn't repeat his...
Here's what I love about Linklater. He does this shit without being condescending to himself.
Yeah.
He's relatively self-effacing, but he does this stuff quietly. He's like Belatar or like Tarkovsky. He's very much obscured, and he's not one of these directors that is just kind of like the look at me.
It's hard to find his movies, and they're always good,
and they're always amazing.
Like finding Mia Orson Welles and Bernie was difficult. They're not easy movies to get a hold of necessarily. They're not commonplace, but they were both phenomenal movies. I think seeping his way for me probably into my top 10 directors, like, just on consistency alone, of, like, consistently delivering new, fresh, interesting
I would assume he shot into your top 10 as soon as I sent you that short video of the Newton Boys where Ethan Hawke is shooting the sign.
Bandera.
For those of you that don't know, I was watching the Newton Boys one night, which was written and directed by Richard Linklater. And there's a shot in the movie where Ethan Hawke is shooting a sign that says Bandera and Kerrville.
Which are the two places I go out to in Texas.
The 2 places that Matt goes to in Texas. I sent that to him in the middle of the night and said...
And like I've half seen that movie over 10 years ago. And Ben sent it to me and I was like... And I'm like, I'm like, is the Photoshop? Is this like some sort of what in God's name movie is this? What have you done? I sent it to my brother, and he had the same thing. He's just like, I don't know what's going on, but this is off. What has happened? What is going on?
Yeah. Anyways,
a good transition is talking about the McConaughey and the McConaissance of this year. Dallas Buyers Club did not make my top 10 of the year.
It didn't make my top 10 either.
But I enjoyed it. I thought it was a well done movie. And this is a weird thing to it. It's not an attack on the movie, but I will tell you the one thing that pulled me out of enjoying the movie more than I did, and enjoying specifically McConaughey, was that I was watching True Detective. I'd seen 3 episodes of True Detective.
We both were watching True Detective when we watched it.
And I saw Dallas Buyers Club about 3 episodes in, and I was so blown away by what he was doing in True Detective that I don't think I was able to fully appreciate any range that he was showing in Dallas Buyers Club, because he was so far beyond that with what he was doing in the TV show that it kind of paled in comparison, which... God, to have that problem as an actor, that's a wonderful thing, that you're doing so well in 2 different things that the one doesn't look as amazing as the other one is.
And this year he's not in any good movies or any big movies like Interstellar. Not going to be in any huge movies.
Was that the one you said you read, or you read Transcendence?
I read the script for the original script by Jonathan Nolan for.
Do not say anything. I know nothing, literally nothing about that movie. I do not want to know anything more.
Can I say something really quick?
No.
Just because I read, and this is obviously a first script that I think this was the script that was meant for Spielberg when Spielberg was going to direct it. I'm assuming that there have been huge amounts of rewrites and changes. The only thing I'll say is it does not read like a Nolan movie. It read like a Spielberg movie, and it read like a very, very, like, Close Encounters-ish Spielberg movie. with even more like ridiculous flair, like all over the place. I found it so, like I kept reading it, and there just being these huge things where I was just like, what the fuck is happening? And so I'm hoping. It's actually very strange because I consider Spielberg a better director than Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan does what he does very well, but when Spielberg's at his best, Spielberg is.
It's unfair. Spielberg has 30 years on
and that's
Nolan.
True.
Yeah.
And that's true.
And
but
tell me how you define Spielberg before 2000s.
I'm talking about aesthetics. I'm talking about range. I'm talking about everything.
Sure.
I think that Spielberg is a better director than Christopher Nolan. After reading that script, I'm happy that Christopher Nolan is directing this movie because I do feel like, especially if rewrites, that bringing in some more realism and a little bit more groundedness to it. Whereas Spielberg, you can watch movies like the last Indiana Jones movie, and you understand that Spielberg just get carried away. But it was like, I was reading the script and I was like, wow, this is halfway between like a classic, like Close Encounters, kind of getting to AI territory, but then being something like the last Indiana Jones movie, where I was just like, wow, this could get really out of hand.
I know nothing about it, and that's how I plan to go into that one. It's barely on my radar, because it's this summer, right?
It's November.
November. Okay, it's this winter, so that's why I haven't... There's certain movies that I've noticed, like, recently that's taken them so long, like... They're movies where, like, alright, so not to get in, we're kind of going off track on this, but that's okay. That's what I like about the podcast. And Ben and I haven't really talked about a lot of this stuff in a while.
Haven't. Right, yeah.
So maybe this will become a two-parter of the films of 2013 and our preview of 2014. But, we were talking earlier this evening, about our poor friend Nick Santacroce, whose heart, his gigantic heart, has been broken by a little movie being produced by Michael Bay called The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I'm like, oh, the Ninja Turtles had their first preview. Like, the first trailer has come out for the movie. I'm like, oh my god, it opens this summer. Like, it's not even... the first time I've seen footage from it is just a few months before it's actually going to be on the screens. And I see a lot more of that. Like, Interstellar, we've had one... almost trailer for it, a teaser, but nothing. We've had nothing for Into the Woods, which is coming in November or December, which I'm very curious to see what happens with that. But and more, which I kind of like. I like when a movie sneaks up on me. Not to say that some movies don't have all the hype and also live up to it, which it looks what's going to be the case, and we'll know after tomorrow for Captain America. They've obviously been advertising the hell out of that movie, but the reviews have just been like it's at 93% on Rotten Tomatoes.
That makes sense.
Like, that's amazing. Like, literally everyone's saying, you were talking about how that Iron Man 3 wasn't as good as Avengers. For me, still to date, the Marvel movie for me to beat is Iron Man 1. Like, that first Iron Man, I love the Avengers, but as far as a film that I probably will revisit and enjoy more, the first Iron Man hits me on every level, other than the finale.
I agree.
And everyone's like, this is so much better than that and the Avengers.
The last act of Iron Man, it has some flaws to it, but which is the second act of the Avengers has some flaws to it for me, where it's mostly exposition before it gets into all the great set stuff at the last act.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but like just amazing things from Captain America, including people that hated the first Captain America, which I like. The first
I was thinking about this today. Who directed this one?
This is the two dudes that it's a team, the same as what they did with Thor 2. Thor 2 was the dudes from Game of Thrones. This is another duo. They got this one and have already been given the reins for the third Captain America.
Okay, well, yeah, because I completely forgotten who did this.
Yeah, it's I can tell you.
Well, it doesn't even matter.
No, it's good to know. But yeah,
we're actually we're pretty good on time, so we can actually go into some of the other.
Well, I'll talk about. So you talked about a couple of the ones that are on your list. I'm going to go into a couple of mine.
Well, first off, I'm just going to rapid fire off a couple that are just very perfunctory. They're very sort of.
Okay.
I throw them in because I really enjoyed them. One's Wolf of Wall Street, which I know that you enjoy.
Yes.
And it's the Scorsese. It is what it is. It is very fast paced. It's the super high living lifestyle, very balls to the wall sort of movie. It's fucking hysterical. I mean, it really is probably... I mean, it's the most of the straight-up comedies that have been made in the past couple of years.
I will say, listen, I'm very happy everyone is in love again with Matthew McConaughey, and he's going to put an Emmy on top of that Oscar on his shelf this coming year.
This is
I
the
think
only
pretty much guaranteed
fucking year
that he's got it. And the only problem I have with it is that I have not seen someone working harder as an actor in a film than DiCaprio in Wolf of Wall Street. Listen, everyone talks about Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, which is an amazing performance, and there is energy to spare in it. But he is almost a minor character. He's a secondary character in The Dark Knight. DiCaprio is in just about every shot, every scene of Wolf of Wall Street, playing the most ridiculous, high-energy person, and you never see it waver. I can't imagine what that shoot was like, as coming from an actor standpoint, of someone having to hit that level for that length of time to carry a movie like that. I really don't know when I've seen a performance full of energy as much as that one. And it's too bad. The kid, he's not a kid, but he still looks like a kid, absolutely deserved for me to win Best Actor this year.
Absolutely,
I think it was
I
his
agree
year.
with that. The other movie I wanted to mention was Desolation of Smaug, which Smaug, which a lot of people will say is a marked improvement on the first movie. That was the critical consensus, is that it was a marked improvement. Which I thought that actually the first Hobbit movie was very, especially after revisiting it a couple times, I was like, this was really an underrated movie because it creates its own aesthetic, and that's the thing that Matt was expecting Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Which apparently, if you're still expecting Lord of the Rings, then the next movie is probably going to be for you. But
I do listen. I like the second one way more than I like the first.
But they still fit aesthetically very well together, and I would rate them right around the same place at the latter end of my list. But I still think they're great, fantastic. They're great technical achievements. Smaug himself was a pretty awesome, and having Benedict Cumberbatch as voicing Smaug is one of the great ideas.
I will say I had a much better appreciation. I went and watched that movie with Ben very late at night during a very busy work schedule, and I was exhausted. And I was nodding off during pretty much everything between the barrel moment and getting to the dragon, which is a longer stretch than it seems it needs to be, as far as I'm concerned, where they're on that little, whatever, the island. I know they have to be there because obviously bad things are going to happen to the people on that thing, and they have to set it up. Okay, that's fine.
Lake Town.
But when I watched it again on home, at my brother's house, my mom, my brother, it was one of those, tell me if you have this moment. I'm guilty of this constantly, and it's very strange. I'll watch a movie, and I'll be lukewarm on it, but I'll recognize the merit. And then I will recommend that movie to someone and watch it with them. And I'm invested in it being a good experience for them. So I'm like, oh, there's just really...
Absolutely.
This is good stuff. I did that very much with my brother again, with Ted. You and Beth and I went and saw Ted. And I was like, Ted's good. It's not a great movie. It was a little overhyped, but I still thought it was really enjoyable. And I brought it down to my brothers. And I was like, here, this is Ted, do it. And as I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, there's a really funny part coming up. Oh, there's another really funny part coming up. Oh, my brother's going to love this part here. And I appreciated it much more in a second viewing, which is always kind of interesting.
So what were some of the ones that you...
Before we get to that real quick, I'm even more impressed at the directing history of the brothers Russo. I've directed New Captain America.
Right. Yeah.
Here are the previous things they have worked on before Captain America. Animal Practice, which is affectionately called Monkey Doctor between my brother and me, which I actually thought was a very, very funny sitcom, but got canceled immediately. They directed a bunch of Community episodes, a bunch of Happy Endings, Running Wild, Carpoolers. The only feature films they have are You, Me, and Dupree, and that's it. They directed a bunch of Arrested Development. They only TV sitcoms. And one feature film that is not a very good film, but Marvel, whatever they saw in Community or whatever these guys pitched them, Marvel saw something in it, and they've somehow delivered the best Marvel movie, supposedly, to date. I'll judge it tomorrow, but that's fascinating to me. As far as what's on my list, I will tell you the most surprising thing that I had very little interest in, and I've not been able to shake since I watched it, and it surprised me a great deal, was Captain Phillips. Captain Phillips, not only in my top 10...
I haven't seen Captain Phillips yet, so...
I gotta say, probably Captain Phillips is my top 5 of last year. I was absolutely blown away by the direction and the editing, which I will say are far better than anything I saw in Gravity.
I really don't understand why people are always so surprised that a Paul Greengrass movie is good. Because
I'm surprised at how the editing and the pacing, how he made it work. He does not always make it work. I don't think the Bourne movies always work with his stuff.
They don't always work, but he still did Bloody Sunday.
He did Bloody Sunday. He did
United
3. Yes,
3.
I understand. I didn't know which Greengrass I was going to get. The trailers were tense, but I was like, I wasn't... The story also just didn't... To me, I was just like, okay.
Oh, Beth was like, is that movie going to be good at all? Like, she thought it was going to be awful.
I remember you showed me the first trailer, and you're like, this looks really good. And I was like, I think it does, but I don't know. I'll tell you how I had to watch that movie. I watched the first 25 minutes or 20 minutes of it sometime in November at my house. And I was so locked up and tense because I didn't really know the story, and I didn't know who lived or died on the ship, that I had to turn it off. And I was not able to revisit it until right before the Oscars, like 2 weeks before the Oscars, sometime in January. I went back in January. I still had trouble getting past the same point, even though at this time now I know exactly how it pans out. And as it gets to the end, I was even more tense. And listen, everyone knows I'm a gigantic Tom Hanks fan, but
they know. They know. Visit episode 1, season 1.
Moment. Yeah, this is all tying it back to last year's opener. He has a moment at the end of it that's so raw and awful that
It's so raw and awful. I just had to whip it out and start going after it.
That was Greg basically recalling a joke from an old episode of Friends, but I was like, as with most Tom Hanks movies, I was reaching for the Kleenex at the end, but this time for a different reason.
Nice.
So yeah, I loved Captain Phillips. Other movies on my list, Ben did mention Kings of Summer, and I don't know if you mentioned The Way Back. Those two were honorable mentions. They got pushed out of my top 10 for a movie I know is on yours, and it's on mine as well. You might be surprised, which is Prince Avalanche.
Prince Avalanche is one of my top 3 of last year.
Prince Avalanche, Ben and I...
top 4.
We've mentioned it on a couple of casts at this point now, but...
David Gordon Green is kind of making a pretty not-so-quiet comeback right now. And David Gordon Green has always been one of my favorite directors, and he kind of went by the wayside because he smoked a bunch of really good studio weed. I think by studio weed I mean money. I think he was just smoking $100 $100 bills.
$100 bills? I watched
$50 bills.
I watched a totally random movie over the weekend that I thought it was very close to feeling like Snow Angels, but not nearly as good.
What was it?
You probably never heard of it. It's called oh God, it's not like The Best Man's whatever, but it's something Save the Best Man or something The Best Man. It's an indie flick. Justin Long. And Tyler Labine, the guy he was in the I've talked about him before. He's like one of my favorite character actors. He's in Tucker and Dale Must Die. He's in the Planet of the Apes remake. He's the guy that gets sick, and it's like looking after. He's got big hair and beard.
Okay.
But it's so I watched 2 movies this weekend that are both from last year. That was one of them. And the other was a movie called Enough Said with one of Gandolfini's last movies.
Gandolfini and
and it was a really amazing thing for me to look at how a movie is sold in its log line and what actually you wind up seeing on the screen. So the log line for, I think it's called Save the Best Man. The log line is that a best man at someone's wedding dies the night of the wedding. And instead of being able to go on their honeymoon, they have to go to the funeral in like Michigan.
I remember hearing about this.
And it looks, based on the cast and based on the logline, it looks like it's going to be some ridiculous comedy. And you can tell with the direction, the director didn't really know but when they get into the small town and there's this big mystery that starts to like unravel about the best man and some interesting things on there was a very Snow Angels small town feel to it, and then it just kind of shit the bed by the end of it, and overall it was just not a great film, but it was one of those that was like, it was close. If it had committed one way or another, it could have been a great one. Enough Said is in the same vein in that the log line is like, a woman starts dating a man only to find out that he's the ex-husband of her new best friend. That's essentially the plot of Enough Said. And that's accurate, but the difference is that the three main characters that you're dealing with as far as acting are Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Catherine Keener, and James Gandolfini, which elevates just about any movie to a level. And I will say the one that surprised me the most was Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who is miles away from the Elaine Bennis character and from the Veep character, and has one moment of heartbreaking vulnerability in it that it sold me. Absolutely sold me by the end of the movie. So I recommend those. Those aren't on my list, but I just thought I would share them.
I've got two more that are actually on my list.
Yes.
That were I just kind of want to randomly throw them in because they're very random movies to put on my list. One is Much Ado About Nothing. Joss Whedon's Much Ado About Nothing.
Damn good movie.
You actually saw it.
I bought it.
Well, I knew you bought it, but you hadn't
I finally
seen
watched
it
at my brother's with my my mom and my brother.
Wasn't it
good?
good?
It was fantastic.
Yeah, it was really, really awesome. Right?
Amazing physical comedy.
Yeah.
Amazingly, just the casting was perfect. I thought the directing touch, everything about it, absolutely worked for me.
Yeah, yeah.
That's my favorite Shakespearean play, and I'm very partial to the original movie version with Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson. But it is a damn good one. That's in my top 10, I would say.
Yeah. No,
I forgot we never talked about that.
Yeah, we never talked about it because I never realized that you actually saw it.
Yeah.
No, that's a great. It was a lot of fun, and it's very under the radar. But we recommend it. Anybody
and the main dude, I want to find out what that actor, what other things. I didn't know him from anything else. The one that played.
He's Allison Hannigan's husband. He
I know who he. I know
he's Angel. Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
He's not David Boreanaz.
No.
He's in those things.
No, I could tell you his name.
Listen, I'm not a big Buffy fan.
No, but he's in Buffy. He's in two seasons of Buffy.
He's in all of the Whedon stuff, but he's not a main known person. I'll tell you that no one in the household I was in knew who the hell he was, I knew who he was.
He's a pretty well-known TV actor.
I will say he is a lot more versatile than I expected at first. I wasn't quite sure about him at first. He was a little too pretty.
He's actually in How I Met Your Mother. He plays Sandy Rivers.
Either way, I want to see this guy in more movies, and I want to see him breaking out into bigger things. So give this guy a freaking Marvel franchise, Joss, and make his life, because the guy is very good.
I don't think he's hurting too much. Shit, well, I can't believe I can't realize his. I want to call him Sandy Rivers, but
I can tell you his name. Yeah, I did not know him. Give him a shout out. You can name some more off of your.
The other one that I want to mention was Europa Report. Europa Report was a hard.
Just watched that on Sunday.
It's a hard sci-fi film that was made on a very limited budget, and it's very uneven, and there are parts that don't really feel that great.
Alexis Denisof.
Alexis Denisof, of course.
Yes, because everyone knows Alexis Denisof.
Yeah, well, I know Alexis Denisof. After you've told me his name.
Yeah, I know Alexis Denisof. He was in First Night. So he's got that going for him.
No, but Europa Report was a really, really interesting movie, and the last part of it is really, really well done. And, I mean, we're talking about a hard sci-fi movie with a very limited budget. We're not talking about Primer here. We're talking about something...
It reminded me of Moon.
That involves space travel, but it was... Even though the production values weren't as high as Moon, Moon was made... They had more money with Moon.
It's funny, it's really weird that you mentioned... I literally just watched that like 48 hours ago on Sunday night.
I thought about that movie for weeks after I saw it, and I was very interested in what they did with it.
Parts of it worked for me. The overall concept worked for me.
And Interstellar has a lot of things in common with.
Don't tell me anymore. Yeah, Europa Report was, it was interesting. I do not like the directorial choice of showing what they show at the end of the film. I thought was very silly.
That one shot, you mean?
The one shot. You have one money shot they probably blew 40% of their budget on to make a 2-second shot in a still image.
It was too elaborate.
And it was too much. Not to give anything away, but I would have preferred more of a Contact type ending to what they did. It reminded me of Signs, of a lot of good build-up, and then I was not happy with the choice at the last minute to show what they show. But
I still thought it was pretty terrifying, but...
The freaking one of the things from The Matrix. Whatever. I'm totally ruining it for anyone that actually wants to watch this movie. But yeah, that definitely is nowhere on my radar for anything of last year. I was going to mention it because I just watched it, but
no, I really liked it just because of its of the.
I will say, as far as other things, American Hustle I liked, but I had a similar problem I think other people had, is that I watched American Hustle immediately after watching Wolf of Wall Street, and I need to watch American Hustle again to give it the proper context as a film, because I think that it's like driving in a Formula One car at super speeds, and you're like, holy cow, that was pretty amazing. And then you get in a really sleek and nice, fancy, regular street car, and you're like, well, this is really nice, but I was just in that crazy thing, and I don't know how to process this.
Well, what I was going to say is go through, because I really only have 2 movies left that I wanted to discuss.
That's what, I'll be honest, I mean, I talked a little bit about that I was Luke. Oh, okay, so the one that Ben hasn't seen, which is Her.
Yeah.
And the other ones is probably on Ben's list, that's also mine, is Nebraska. Nebraska and Her both are on my list. And what I like about why they're on my list is that they are... Okay, no, let's go. We'll do Nebraska second, because I think that's probably on. I don't know if that's on yours or not.
It's my favorite film.
Okay. There's another one that you haven't mentioned that I don't think is on your list, but I'll talk about Her first. Her is, and Nick kind of mentioned it to me before I saw it, which was right. Her is a fascinatingly. I am a sucker for a device used in certain movies. And it's done well, I think, in a movie like Minority Report. I like movies set in the future that feel like now in the future. They're not so far-fetched that I can't conceive that this is a potential thing.
The only part of Minority Report that I disagree with that is that whole fast-moving pod thing.
Listen, there are two weird...
But other than that, everything else in Minority
when they
Report
go to Georgetown and there's still old brownstone buildings there and that stuff like that, there's a lot of... There's the freeway stuff is a little nutso, but hey, listen, I'll give Spielberg
of course
what he wants to do. Her is another one that it's like there are certain things that are really futuristic, but they're few and far between, and most of them are just little things, and you're like, oh, that makes sense. There would be something different, and and 9 out of 10 times in Her, they're done in the background. They're basically like window dressing, and they're not the focus of it, and you're dealing with other stuff. I think it's some amazing performances. I'm dying to get the Blu-ray because I want to see what happened between the casting of Samantha Morton as the AI voice and then bringing Scarlett Johansson after it had been shot, and knowing that Joaquin Phoenix has talked about how much Samantha Morton's performance tailored his performance. And I've seen a few movies with recasting and things like that where you can see the seams. I don't see it in Her. It feels like that Scarlett Johansson was on set. The other one, Inside Llewyn Davis. Did you ever catch that?
Oh, I actually never saw it until Llewyn Davis.
Okay. I'm a sucker for Coen Brothers. Pretty much any year that they have a movie out, I'm going to say it's on my top 10 list. Really, it's very Coen-y once it gets going, but the first 30 to 40 minutes of that movie did not feel Coen Brothers to me. It was dark. It was grounded. More No Country for Old Men than Fargo or Big Lebowski or even stuff like Blood Simple. It was just. I
actually heard that the first 30 minutes kind of feels like a Woody Allen movie, like almost like it's very like dry.
It feels very period. It feels like it's shot in the time period, and it's not showy, and it's not broad.
Yeah, exactly.
It gets broader as it gets going, and I like the choice of that because the movie tends to be getting more dire as it goes through, and they get more broad with that kind of drawing with it. I think they had a lot of fun with it. Adam Driver has a phenomenal bit part in it, as he seems to do in just about anything that he's involved in, that made me laugh my ass off. And a very good big shout out to what's his name, Mr. Jessica Biel, Justin Timberlake, doing a very, very fine job in his small
movie. How you have to...
I had to think of her first. I'm sorry.
I won't blame you.
I thought of her twice.
just go to the bathroom.
All right, I'm sorry. You got children in the house. Sorry.
Anyways, well, the movies that I wanted to mention as my favorite movies of this year, obviously you said Nebraska,
yeah,
which I think ended up being my favorite movie of the year. I previously mentioned that Upstream Color was my favorite movie for a long time, leading up until almost December. And then there were two movies I saw in December that kind of rivaled that for me. Now, Prince Avalanche was one of the good movies I saw that kind of floated right outside of that. The other two movies that I saw were Nebraska and Drinking Buddies.
Oh, God, that's a great movie.
Now, Drinking Buddies is kind of tied up there for one of the best films I saw last year because it is so unassuming. It's one of the most unassuming and uncliched, or not cliched, films I've seen. And I know it's the Mumblecore guys. I know it's Joe Swanberg who did it, who's been criticized, rightfully so, for some of the stuff that they've done. But it's such a well thought out, well written, well performed movie on all accounts on it and the thing that I want to almost immediately compare to is How I Met Your Mother. It's like the on-screen equivalent of How I Met Your Mother, only the characters are actually real.
Yeah.
And the stakes are actually real. I mean, it feels like these feel like people I could be friends with. And they feel like people I know. And the point where you think the movie's going to turn and you think it's going to go to something that you're, well, of course it's going to go to that place. They do a complete turnaround. And they go in the exact opposite direction that at the end of the movie you're like, wow, that's more like real life.
Yeah.
That's the way things work. And it was a wonderful, I still remember smiling so big at the last scene of that movie.
Which is totally improv moment.
The improv scene of that, of the last moment of that movie. Just laughing my ass off and being like, these guys fucking nailed it. Like, they got it.
And you know that scene polarizes so many people watching it. They're like, what the hell? There's no ending. It didn't finish. What was that? Why did we watch the last thing?
To me, the movie ends. You know, the emotional arc of the movie ends in the scene before.
Do you know what ending it reminded me of 100%? And I actually watched the movie right after I watched it because it got me in the mood to do it, is Big Night. Big Night is another movie where you have this very cathartic climax, and then you have this small scene after it that's not spoken, that's largely improvised, that kind of tells you everything you need to know as far as the wrap-up of what you're going to get.
Absolutely.
I will mention a movie I don't think you've seen, but you just reminded me of it, and I knew there was a small movie that I just watched that I didn't remember, and this is why I was comparing the Save the Best Man, Best Man Down. That's the name of that stupid other movie I watched.
Yes.
So that one had gotten me starting to think about Snow Angels only because of the movie I watched before it. Now it's all coming back to me. The Spectacular Now. with
I've heard of,
Miles Teller
yeah.
and Shailene Woodley, by the director who did Smashed, which is a very a great film. If you've not seen it, I highly recommend it. Aaron Paul and Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Very short movie, 81 minutes long.
As is Spectacular Now, similarly short, very small cameo by the one I just mentioned, the female from Smashed, Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Miles Teller, great. Obviously, it's very weird. The director has a thing with alcoholism, for sure. It's a very big through line in it. Spectacular Now, you need to watch, Ben, not the audience out there, since you can't tell I'm looking at Ben as I say that. You need to watch, because I'm very curious if you think it reminds you of the Snow Angels vibe as much as it did for me.
Okay.
It's something about it. There's a overriding. It winds up being much more hopeful, I think, by the end. But there's a
if it doesn't involve
there's
getting shot in a suicide.
Yeah, there are things that happen, and there's a great there's a great a small but pivotal role played by oh good God, what's the name of the actor? He was in Friday Night Lights and Super 8.
You're not going to
and Argo and goddamn,
no,
you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Bruce or Brad, Kyle Chandler. Kyle Chandler, who
I was just gonna say, what is it? Full heart. Full.
I don't know where you're going with this one. Yet.
Dry eyes, full heart, can't lose, or whatever it is that they always say on.
I don't know, but yeah, Kyle Chandler has a great role. Highly recommend that. There was a series of small movies last year that collectively made up one of my favorite indie years, between Prince, Avalanche, and even things like Nebraska, which is on the more visible side of it, which I think I was surprised. I recommended Nebraska to Greg, and I wasn't sure because it's a very, very subtle movie and a very kind of...
I disagree.
I felt it was. He was like, yeah, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but this is hysterical. Like, this movie is
way over the top.
See, I didn't, other than the scenes with the family, like the cousins that they go to see, I felt the rest of it was very, like, I was waiting for something bigger that never happened, which wound up I liked it. It was just one of those, I don't think I was prepared for what it wound up being, and I liked it more once I actually watched it.
The reason why I love Nebraska so much, and why I think it is my favorite movie of last year, is it was just, it captured the essence of Middle America so well.
Yes.
For me, I have family members in Omaha, Nebraska, and it's just I was like, I could see these guys are like my family members, kind of in a way.
I saw some of it. It was,
but it was photographed beautifully.
Yes,
and then just seeing an actor like Will Forte, who is known for being this manic comic actor, and being MacGruber.
Yes.
And have him being the subtle actor.
Yeah.
In a scene with Bruce Dern.
And the bass for the whole movie, really.
And it is really just so grounded, and he's wonderful in that role. I mean, he really is. He's just beautiful in that role. And having Bruce Dern be the bigger character than him. Bruce Dern, who was the everyman.
Yes.
For his entire career. And Bruce Dern being this very eccentric old man, just like drunken character. And halfway through the movie, and I was like, wow, this is just kind of like these little, it's a lot of little pieces of America basically thrown together. And halfway through the movie, when they're having these moments when he's like, I still remember that scene where he's like, I'm gonna drink. You're not gonna have a drink with your father. And so he's like, fine, I'll have a beer. Whatever. And then it just cuts to the next scene, and they're just like, you can tell that they've had so much, and it's so indicative of the way that we don't want to be, and we always want to be our fathers.
Yeah,
and the way that we always completely abhor our families, but always embrace our families. There are just so many parts in that movie that just made me think, yeah, this is Midwest America, but this is just fucking America to me. This is just life to me. And by the end of the movie, And the last sequence of the movie, I won't spoil it for anyone, but the last sequence of the movie is just a very beautiful sequence that was very artistically done and very, very well done. And really, you see pain in all of the static shots.
Yeah.
Where it looks like these matte paintings. But the real pain moment was those last 5 minutes of the movie. And I think it is my favorite movie of last year. And it overtook Drinking Buddies, it overtook Upstream Color. Very, very different types of movies.
See, for me, Prince Avalanche edged it out for a similar type of feel. I do want to give, before we wrap up here, we're just about done, I will say there are also 2 honorable mentions that were big movies as far as nominations, but they're both movies that I think are missing something. One is Blue Jasmine, Woody Allen's latest. Cate Blanchett absolutely 100% deserved the award, and no one else was even close. As far as I'm concerned, to her, I would have loved to have seen
which is often the case in Woody Allen films, is that the performances are amazing.
They're a little more than
and the movie is.
It's his attempt at Sunset Boulevard, and that tends to hamper it a little bit at times. But the performances are great, including the other one who was up for Best Supporting Actress.
It's either, and here's my thing, and this is from the person who says Woody Allen is the greatest working director alive. Woody Allen's movies. They're most of the time, 90% of the time, it's the actors. It's him working with the actors and the actors making more of the movie than they should be.
Yeah.
The other 10% of the time, it's the actors being completely subtle and the movie being better than it should be.
That is
AKA
true.
Match Point, AKA Sleeper, AKA, I mean, I could throw in a couple more there.
And the other one that I wound up really, it took a second, it took a little bit to get into it, but once it picked up, which was really great, is Philomena, which I don't know if you
I haven't
saw
seen
Philomena.
No, I haven't seen
Philomena was one of those great ones that was like the last on my list. I'm like, all right, I gotta make it through Philomena. I literally watched it, I think, like an hour before I had people over for the Oscars, and I loved it. Like it's very on point for what it's going to be. Steve Coogan is
I heard he was great.
Is fantastic, and and I remember Greg had watched it before me, and I was like, so who are you going for Best Actress? He goes, I think it's Blanchett, but I really like Judi Dench in this. And I'm like, and I'm in my head, I'm thinking, I know what I'm going to see.
Yeah.
And then I watched it, and it was not at all what I was expecting from her, and it was much deeper performance. And had it been any other year, I think I would have voted for her to win. But okay, that was just got in right at about an hour. For those of you listening that are looking at the clock, and we managed to fit in quite a bit about last year.
Absolutely.
From I don't know if many other lists are as strangely inclusive of crazy movies as ours were, and I'm sure we left some things off that we'll get to. But this is us kicking back into gear. We're going to come up with some good ideas.
You might occasionally hear an episode that was recorded a while ago, which would be...
We're going to sound so young! Yeah, we're going to be playing some stuff we recorded a Christmas special, a holiday special that we never aired, so you're probably going to get that in like July, just randomly out of nowhere. So you get some things. You're going to hear also from some of our other... previous guests are going to be coming back for podcasts. We've got some kind of branching out things with, we did an interview with a band leader who is launching an album very soon.
Yeah, it's going to be coming out this week.
On April 6th, the launch of the Dirty Skirty album Rebel. So definitely check that podcast out. We'll have it up soon, and we'll probably put a call out on our site. Yes, we will start updating the blog again. So you should hopefully be seeing a lot more content from us coming up. And you can find us on Facebook.com/lastpint. Last Pint, and on Twitter @LastPintProd, or on our website lastpintprod.com, or anywhere else you possibly see the names Ben Wilson. If you're in LA and you want to meet Ben or Matt for a nominal fee of $25 for signed, autographed photos of both of us nude together.
Actually, I think we should buy our listeners beers. Be like, if you would like to have a beer bought for you by us.
I already told John Arthur we're going to watch some soccer and buy him some beer while we're out there.
Absolutely.
So, we'll be out in LA somewhere around the 30th of July to the first few days of August. So
We're moving it indefinitely.
It will be there indefinitely. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to The New Way with Ben and Matt. We hope you enjoyed our callback episode for the comeback, and we will talk to you soon.
Cheers.
Cheers.